So today we'll be discussing about the histology of female reproductive system. Last week we have discussed the histology of male reproductive system. Most of the parts were discussed. Okay, only one part was left that we'll be discussing today during the histo demonstration class. Okay, so let's start about the female reproductive system. Same like the male reproductive system, in case of female reproductive system also, it is divided into two parts. As you can see, what are they? These are the female reproductive organs and female external genitalia. So the histology which you have to study, that will be the histology of these parts only. That means you have to study the histology of ovaries, then uterine tubes, uterus and vagina. Okay, especially in case of histo. But in case of gross and in case of embryo, the developmental part, you have to study everything. Now, have you studied anything about the ovaries? Anyone? In gross anatomy, have you studied anything about the ovaries? For example, what is the location of the ovary? What are the parts of the ovaries? Not yet? Okay. So that also you have to study. Same like the testes, whatever you have studied, you have to study about the ovaries also. Okay, so today we will not discuss about the gross anatomy. Directly, I will discuss about the histology of the ovary. Okay. Now, what is present in the histology of ovary? Any idea? What is the main function of ovary? To secrete or to produce ovum. That means, what do you think? What will be present inside the ovary? See, histology means you have to cut the ovary, you have to take a thin section, you have to prepare the slide, then you have to see under microscope. Okay. So after that, what can be seen? So always, whenever you are studying about histology of any structure, please correlate accordingly. That means, what will be the function of that structure? Okay, क्या हो सकता है ovary का function? That means those things will be present inside the ovary whenever the sections will be taken. Okay. So, and moreover, I hope you have observed that during these histology lectures, I am giving you the brief concept about what will be present inside the structure. So here inside the ovary, that means whenever you will see a section of the ovary, especially under microscope, two parts are visible. The outer part is called as cortex, inner part is called as medulla in case of ovary. Okay, so that concept of cortex medulla is present over here. Okay, now what is present in the cortex and what is present in the medulla, that you have to know. Okay, that is everything about the microscopic structure of ovary. I hope it is clear. Now regarding kidney, then suprarenal gland, I hope you have mentioned. I hope you have seen that what is present in the cortex, what is present in the medulla. Okay, that concept already we have discussed. Okay, so in the microscopic structure of ovary, as I said, if you see the substance of the gland, it is divided into two parts, that is cortex and medulla. Outer part is the cortex, inner part is the medulla. Next. So, lining epithelium will also be there. That means if you see the outer part of the cortex, so we know that cortex is the outer part. Now outer to that, okay, the lining epithelium which is present in the ovary, that is called as germinal epithelium, which is nothing but simple cuboidal epithelium. Okay, so if you see the entire ovary, the outer part of the cortex, it is lined by a single layer of cuboidal cells. These are called as germinal epithelium. Okay, now this germinal epithelium, it is continuous with the mesothelium. What is this mesothelium? Mesothelium is nothing but the cells of the peritoneum. Now, germinal epithelium doesn't mean that it will give rise to the gametes. That means the ovum or the different stages of oocytes. Okay, it is called as germinal epithelium. But don't think that from this germinal epithelium the ovum is produced. Generally, a student used to think accordingly. Germinal epithelium means the ovum is produced from the germinal epithelium. No, it is only the epithelial lining of the ovary. Okay. Now the germinal epithelium which is there, it is resting on a connective tissue layer that is called as tunica albuginea. Okay, so the lining epithelium, it has to rest. First of all, a basement membrane will be there, and below that what we are getting, a connective tissue layer, and that is called as tunica albuginea. Now this particular tunica albuginea is not that dense like the testis. So in testis also you have seen that tunica albuginea is present. Okay, but the tunica albuginea which is present in the testis, that is more thick, that is more dense as compared to the tunica albuginea of the ovary. Okay, so as you can see, the germinal epithelium is resting on connective tissue layer that is called tunica albuginea, which is thinner and less dense as compared to the testis. Okay. Next, if you see the tunica albuginea, it is made up of irregular collagenous connective tissue capsule, and collagen fibers are also there, which is running parallel with the ovarian surface. Okay. So in that connective tissue, that especially in the tunica albuginea, what is present? Irregular collagenous connective tissue capsule, and along with that collagen fibers are also present. Okay. So that is about the outer aspect of the ovary. Okay, outer to the cortex, these things are present. Below that, what will be present? Cortex is there, and inner to the cortex, medulla is there. Let me show you the diagram. To see, I was talking about this germinal epithelium. So see, this is the germinal epithelium. Okay, here also entire part first will, whole you will be getting the germinal epithelium. Okay, after germinal epithelium, you can see this is the tunica albuginea. This layer is the tunica albuginea. Okay. Next to the tunica albuginea, this part is the cortex, where different types of cells can be seen. Okay, different types of cells can be seen. And inside part, this is the medulla. Okay, this part is the medulla, and this entire part is the cortex. Okay. So first of all, what you have to notice in case of ovary is, first you will be getting the germinal epithelium. See, this is the germinal epithelium. So germinal epithelium is made up of what? Simple cuboidal epithelium. Now it is resting on a collagenous fibrous tissue. Okay, and that is called as tunica albuginea. As you can see, this particular part. See, this is the tunica albuginea. Next to that, we are getting the cortex. So this is the cortex, and this is the medulla. Now in medulla, mainly blood vessels, nerves, lymphatics, they are entering the gland through the medulla, and in the medulla hilum is present, and along with that hilus cells are also there. Okay, we will discuss. But the most important thing is present in the cortex, as you can see. Okay, so what are present in the cortex? If you see the diagram, different stages of oocytes are present. Okay, as you can see, primary follicles are there, primordial follicles, primary follicles. Then you can see a mature follicle is there. Okay, then corpus luteum is present, corpus albicans. Okay, so these are the different stages of the oocytes are present over here. Okay, so before ovulation, after ovulation, all the cells, okay, as you can see, they are present in the cortex. And if you see, the is mainly occupied by blood vessels, nerves, lymphatics. Okay, this is how you have to identify the various parts of ovaries. Okay, under microscope. Now, if you see the cortex, so cortex of the connective tissue, okay, of the stroma is mainly made up of reticular fibers, and along with that fusiform cells are also there, which resemble to the mesenchymal cell, and they are also called as stromal cell or interstitial cells. Next, in the stroma of the cortex, okay, stroma of the cortex, it consists of ovarian follicles at various stages of development. Just now I have shown you what is present in the cortex. First of all, the stroma of the cortex is made up of reticular fibers, and numerous fusiform cells are there, which are mesenchymal in origin. Along with that, it also contains ovarian follicles, the cortex, at various stages of development. Okay, so I hope you have studied about the oogenesis. I know you have studied about the oogenesis. So during oogenesis, you have seen various stages of development of oogenesis is there. So those cells are also present, okay, in the cortex of the ovary. Okay, so for that, what we have to do, we have to divide the ovary into different ages of life or different stages of life, so that we can understand at which stage what are the different types of cells present. Okay, for example, as I said, stroma is made up of mainly ovarian follicles at various stages of development. Okay, now at birth, what are the different types of cells present? During childbearing period, during reproductive life, and after menopause. So these are the different stages of life, particularly for the women. During that period, inside the ovary, what are the different types of cells present, that you have to know. Okay, so at birth, mainly you can see centrally placed primary oocyte is there, and it is surrounded by a layer of follicular cells. Okay, next, during the childbearing period, primordial follicles are divided into primary, secondary, and tertiary follicular stage. Okay, so see, these are the changes which are taking place at the cortex. Next, during the reproductive life, it contains of ovarian follicles, then corpus luteum. I hope you know what is corpus luteum. Next, you can see atretic follicles and corpora albicantia, are also called as corpus albicans. Do you know the difference between corpus luteum and corpus albicans? Anyone? Corpus luteum means after ovulation. Okay, the part which is formed, it is called as corpus luteum, and when the corpus luteum regresses or degenerates, it forms a scar-like white tissue that is called as corpus albicans. And from corpus albicans, no hormones, nothing is secreted, even it don't have any blood supply also. Okay, so all those things can be seen. Now, especially after menopause, if you see the cortex, it becomes fibrotic and contains interstitial cells and corpus albicans. Okay, so these are the various changes which are taking place in the cortex of the ovary. Okay, at various stages of life. Okay, that means at each and every stage you cannot expect to see all the cells, all different types of cells. Next, what is there in the medulla? So as I said, the medulla consists of loose connective tissue, smooth muscle cells, blood vessels, lymphatics and nerves. All those things are present, because through medulla only all those structures are entering the ovary. Okay, so that's why the hilum is also present. The hilum of the ovary is also present at the medulla. Okay, now in the hilum, it also contains some remnants of the mesonephric duct. I know you have studied the development, so you have studied about the mesonephric duct. So some remnants are present. Along with that, hilous cells are also present, which are similar to the interstitial cells of the testis, and which secretes androgens. Okay. Now here is the diagram. So already I have shown you the diagram. In the diagram, first you can see the germinal epithelium. Below that, tunica albuginea can be seen. Next to that, you can see the cortex. In the cortex, different types of cells are present. Okay, it is the follicles at different stages of development, and we have divided the different stages of development, and we have seen what are the different types of cells present. Next, this is the medulla. Okay, so in medulla, as I said, it is working as hilum through which those blood vessels, nerves, lymphatics, they are entering, and some are leaving the gland or leaving the organ. Okay, so that is all about the ovaries. Next to ovary is uterus. Okay, so what is present in the uterus? Okay, what are the layers of the uterus? And here you can see, along with the uterus, we will be discussing about the cervix also, and we will be discussing about the microscopic structure of vagina also. Okay. Now, in the histology of uterus, already you have heard about this terminologies. Okay, that means if you see the layers of the uterus from inside to outside, 3 layers are there, right? What are those 3 layers? The innermost layer is called as endometrium, then middle layer is called myometrium, and outermost layer is called the perimetrium. Okay? Now, what are present exactly in those layers that you have to study? Along with that, okay, there are some changes taking place in the endometrium, especially during the different phases of menstrual cycle. Okay, so those changes also you have to know in the histology of uterus. Why? Because the slide which is prepared during the different phases of menstrual period, the thickness along with that other changes can also be noticed in the slide of the uterus. Okay, so these three layers are there. First we will discuss about the endometrium, which is the inner mucus layer. So the mucous membrane of the uterus is also called as endometrium. Now this endometrium consists of lining epithelium and along with that lamina propria, also called as stroma. Okay, as you can see, the endometrium is consisting of lining epithelium along with that lamina propria or stroma is also present. Now the most important part over here is in the stroma we are getting numerous uterine glands. Okay, next, what is the lining epithelium? In this case, the lining epithelium is simple columnar epithelium. Okay, now before menarche, the lining epithelium is simple columnar epithelium that also ciliated. Okay, as you can see, before menarche, the cells are ciliated, but during the reproductive life, it is lined by simple columnar epithelium. Why? Because those cilia cannot grow due to repeated destruction of the superficial part of the endometrium during menstruation. Okay, that's why we are getting only the simple columnar epithelium. But before menarche, it is simple columnar that also ciliated. Next, if you see the lamina propria, it contains embryonic stromal cells, blood vessels, lymphatics, and along with that tubular uterine glands are also present. Okay. Now, if you see the glands, they are lined by simple columnar epithelium, and these glands they extend up to the inner surface of the myometrium. And the structure of the gland, then the shape of the gland, contents of the gland changes. Okay, during the various stages of menstrual cycle. Now, if you see the endometrium, mainly it is divided into two layers. Okay, what are those two layers? Inner layer and outer layer. Outer layer is also called as the basal layer. Inner layer is called as the functional layer. Okay, like this, two layers are present in the endometrium. Now, if you see the functional layer, mainly the changes are taking place during the menstrual cycle, and it is shed off during the menstrual bleeding. But the basal layer is unaltered. Okay, that means changes are not taking place in the basal layer of the endometrium. Okay, rather it helps in regeneration of the epithelial lining after menstruation. Okay, so two layers are there, functional layer and basal layer. So if you see the basal layer, it remains unaltered and it helps in regeneration of the epithelial lining after menstruation. Okay. Next, in the basal layer, straight blood vessels are there, and in case of functional layer, spiral arteries are there. Okay. The basal layer is mainly supplied by straight blood vessels, straight basal arteries, which are coming from the myometrium, and in case of functional layer, it is supplied by spiral arteries. Okay. Now, because of the spiral arteries, it allows the diminished blood flow, okay, which undergo vasoconstriction before the menstruation. Now, have you heard about the living ligature? In uterus, you can see living ligature. Okay, now what is this living ligature? How it is formed? Okay, that we'll discuss in the myometrium layer. Next, as I said, there are some changes taking place in the endometrium. Okay, during different phases of menstrual cycle. Okay, so among them, one phase is the proliferative phase. So during proliferative phase, different changes are taking place in the endometrium. I know you have studied this thing earlier. Okay, so you have to correlate with the histology in this particular part. Okay, so if you see the endometrium, it is proliferating rapidly in this proliferative phase. It lasts within the first 4 to 7 days. Okay, at that time the uterine glands start developing, okay, into the endometrial stroma. Then a blood vessel will reappear into the stroma, because blood vessel is very important in order to increase the thickness of the endometrial lining. Okay, now the proliferation which takes place, it goes approximately 3 to 4 millimeter. Okay, at the end of the proliferative phase. Now at this stage the uterine changes during proliferative phase occurs because of the influence of estrogen which is released by the ovary, okay, especially by the granulosa cells of the ovaries, okay. Next, on 14th day of ovulation when it occurs, now this is taking place under the influence of the LH hormone, okay, and this is followed by the secretory phase. So in proliferative phase, first of all the thickness of the endometrium increases up to 3 to 4 millimeter, blood supply increases, size of the gland enlarged, okay, and then all those changes are taking place. All those changes are taking place under the influence of estrogen, okay. And the ovulation which is taking place on 14th day, this is by the influence of LH, okay, and that is followed by the secretory phase. Now what happens in case of the secretory phase? As you can see, endometrial glands become more tortuous. That means the size of the endometrial gland will increase further, then it will become tortuous, okay. Though the size increases, it will be filled with secretion. Now what type of secretions are present? Mainly glycogen and lipid will be filled inside the uterine glands which are present in the stroma, okay. Then many blood vessels will appear. That means blood supply will increase in the stroma, okay. After that blood vessel will become tortuous. Next, the thickness also increases and it increases up to 6 to 7 millimeter. Now this secretory phase is also called as preparatory phase because the endometrium prepares itself, because after ovulation if the fertilization takes place, during implantation it can provide adequate nutrition. That's why it is preparing itself, okay. That's why it is also called as the preparatory period. Now all the uterine changes during secretory phase occurs by the influence of estrogen and progesterone, okay. So these are the different changes which are taking place, okay, in the endometrium of the uterus. Next, in this particular diagram, as I have mentioned, in the stroma of the uterus, okay, what especially I am talking about endometrium. So in the endometrium, after lining epithelium, we are getting the lamina propria or the stroma. In that, along with the nerves, blood vessels, lymphatics, uterine glands are also present, simple tubular glands. So these are the uterine glands. So what are the changes taking place in the uterine glands? During the different stages of menstrual period, the size and shape of the gland changes. Along with that, it is filled with secretion, mainly lipid and glycogen. Okay, so as you can see, post-menstrual period, see the shape of the gland. Now here at proliferative stage, see the shape of the gland, and during secretory phase, just see the shape and size of the gland. Okay. So these things can also be seen under microscope. Okay. When the slide is prepared, these things can also be seen. Next, here you can see the layers of endometrium during the proliferative stage. Okay, so this entire part is the endometrium. Okay, now this is the lining epithelium, which is simple columnar epithelium. Okay, next, in case of endometrium, 3 different zones are also there. For example, stratum compactum, stratum spongiosum, and then stratum basale. Okay, and you can see the contents of this particular 3 zones. Actually, clear-cut demarcations are not there. Okay, depending on the proliferation. Okay, depending on the increase in the blood supply and the size and shape of the glands. Okay, you can see different zones. Next, after endometrium, next is the myometrium. So it is the middle layer. Now it consists of bundles of smooth muscle. Myometrium means smooth muscles will be there. Okay. Along with that, connective tissue is present where you can see blood vessels, nerves, and lymphatics. Okay. So in case of uterus, in endometrium also we have seen blood vessels, lymphatic nerves are also there. In myometrium, mainly it is made up of smooth muscles. Along with that, the smooth muscle, bundles of smooth muscle. Here also we can see the connective tissue where blood vessels, lymphatic nerves are also present. Okay. Now here the muscles run in various directions and distinct layers are difficult to define. That means in uterus, bundles of smooth muscle fibers are there. Okay, but the arrangement is not particular. Okay, definite arrangements are not there. That's why the layers are present, but it is ill-defined. It is not clearly defined. So myometrium is mainly made up of three ill-defined layers, that is outer longitudinal and middle and inner circular. So inner and middle circular layer and outer part is the longitudinal. But as I said, it is not clearly distinct, means you can't identify the layers individually, okay, because of the arrangement of the muscle fibers. Now in case of longitudinal muscles, they are continuous with the corresponding muscles of the uterine tubes. Okay, so the longitudinal fibers, they are continuous with the fibers of the uterine tubes or the fallopian tube. Now this particular longitudinal muscle, what it will do, it will help in anchorage of the uterus and expels the uterine content to the exterior. Okay, so uterine content, if it has to come out from the uterus, that is done by the longitudinal muscle fiber. That is the function of the longitudinal muscle fibers of the uterus. Next, if you see the middle layer, it contains vascular bed. Okay, so in the middle layer, vascular bed is present. That's why it is also called as stratum vasculare. Okay, now circular muscle, okay, form sphincter to retain the uterine contents. That is the product of the conception. So that is the function of the longitudinal layer and the circular layer. Next, as I have mentioned about the living ligature, so what is this? The endometrial vessels. Okay, it has to pass through the interstices of the inner reticular arrangement of the smooth muscle layer. So inner layer which is there, okay, so it is arranged in the form of reticulum, or you can say in the form of network, and through that the blood vessel has to pass and then it can reach up to the endometrium. Okay, now when the muscle contracts, at that time what will happen? The bleeding stop during the menstruation or during the separation of the placenta. Okay, that's why the inner layer acts as living ligature of the uterus. So this is also an important function of the myometrium. So in myometrium, as I mentioned, three layers are there. Okay, outer is the longitudinal, inner and middle wall is the circular one. Now if you see the inner layer, the muscle fibers, they are arranged in the form of reticulum, through which the blood vessels are passing and reaching the endometrium. Okay, when that particular layer contracts, at that time what will happen? The bleeding will stop. That means the blood supply from that particular blood vessel will get stopped, and it is required during menstruation and placental separation is taking place. That's why it is called as living ligature of the uterus. Okay. Next, the growth of myometrium is also taking place, especially during the time of pregnancy, and it is stimulated by estrogen. Okay, now two different types of changes are taking place in the myometrium. What are those changes? It is hyperplasia and hypertrophy are taking place during the time of pregnancy. Okay, now contraction of the myometrium is also important for the expulsion of fetus during parturition. Okay, when normal delivery is taking place, at that time the fetus, when it comes out, that is done by the active contraction of the myometrium, which is very important. Last layer is the perimetrium. So perimetrium is mostly made up of peritoneum, okay, which is covering the gland entirely, almost entirely, except at the lateral borders, okay, where it is not covered by the peritoneum. Okay, anterior surface of the supravaginal part of the cervix and the vaginal part of the cervix. These are the areas which are not covered by a peritoneum. Okay, instead of that, entire uterus is covered by peritoneum. Okay, so in the perimetrium, mostly peritoneum will be there. Now the parts which are not covered by a peritoneum, in that we are getting the loose areolar tissue. Okay, so the upper part is separated from the muscle by loose areolar tissue in the lower part. So that is about the perimetrium. Now, so these are the two images of uterus, where this is the follicular phase and this is the secretory phase. Can you see the difference? See, this part is the endometrium, this part is the myometrium. Okay, so first you can see the lining epithelium. See, this is the lining epithelium, which is simple columnar epithelium. Okay, after that, here you can see the stroma or the lamina propria. Okay, where blood vessels, lymphatics, nerves are there. Along with that, uterine glands are also present. So here you can see these are the uterine glands. See, these are the uterine glands, and here you can see these are the blood vessels. Okay. Now, in this particular layer, just see the thickness. Okay, in this particular phase, just see the thickness, and in this particular secretory phase, just see the thickness of the endometrium. Okay, so just now I have mentioned that in different phases, the thickness of the endometrium changes, and along with that, you can also see the changes which are taking place in the glands, uterine glands. Okay, so I am focusing more on this. Why? Because under microscope, these 2 points can be seen easily. Okay. Next, you can see this is the myometrium. Okay, where you can see smooth muscle cells are present. Okay. Now here, particularly, it's difficult to identify what are the different layers. Which one is inner, which one is outer. But at least longitudinal and circular layers can be identified. Okay, so here you can see the longitudinal layers and you can see the circular layer. Okay, here also you can see, so previously this was schematic diagram, this is the actual diagram of the uterus, this is the follicular phase and this is in the secretory phase. Okay, now this is also a histology diagram where you can see all the layers of the uterus. So first you can see the endometrium where functionalis and basalis can be identified easily. Okay? After that you can see this is the myometrium. This is the myometrium. Okay, and this particular part is the perimetrium. This is the perimetrium. Okay, so myometrium, you can see the muscle fibers. You can see the muscle fibers. So, and middle one is circular, and outer one is the longitudinal. Okay, and you can see thin layer of perimetrium can be seen. Okay, so that is all about the uterus. Now after uterus, next we will go to the cervix. Now what is present in the cervix? So first of all, there are some differences in the uterus and the cervix. That means structure is not exactly same. Along with that, we will also see that there are some changes in the lining epithelium. And some changes are also taking place in the glands. Okay. So the mucous membrane of the cervix which is present is also called as endocervix. Okay, which is thrown into obliquely folds. That means whenever you will see the mucous membrane, okay, this is also called as endocervix. उसमें क्या होता है? Folds होता है, oblique folds, and they are called as palmate folds. If you remember about the cervix which we have discussed, mostly the cervix is in the form of canal, okay, also called as cervical canal, extending from internal os to the external os. Okay? Now that lumen of the cervix is always kept closed. Okay? Now if you see the lumen of the cervix, mostly it is thrown into folds, oblique folds, and these are called as palmate folds. Okay? Now deep to that we are also getting the branching glands that secrete mucus, which is rich in lysozyme. Now these small branch tubular glands, they are lying in the lamina propria, and these glands secrete cervical mucus which is rich in lysozyme. The secretion of these glands are very important. Okay, why it is very important? Because when you study the vagina, and that time we will come to know that the vaginal epithelium is kept moist by the secretion of mucus which is secreted from the cervix. Okay, because in vagina no mucus glands are present, but it is kept moist. How it is kept moist? By the mucus which is secreted from the cervix. Okay, that's why these glands are very important. And these glands are also rich in lysozyme. Now numerous the mucous membrane of the upper 2/3 of the cervical canal is lined by ciliated columnar epithelium. Now see, from here the lining epithelium changes. So the upper part of the cervical canal, it is lined by ciliated. In the lower one third it is lined by non-ciliated columnar, and near the external os it is lined by stratified squamous non-keratinized epithelium. Okay, so the lining epithelium also changes in the cervix. Upper part it is simple columnar, that is also ciliated. Next, if you go to the lower one third, then it is non-ciliated columnar epithelium, and near the external os beyond that, okay, it is stratified squamous non-keratinized epithelium. Okay, so these are the changes taking place in the mucosal lining of the cervix. Next, the mucosa of the cervix which is there, it is resting, means it needs a support. So how the support is provided? That support is provided by the fibroelastic tissue, where smooth muscles are present, approximately 6 to 25%. Okay, now along with that the elastic component is also present. Okay, fibroelastic component is there. Okay, so the elastic component is very important because it allows the distension of the cervix. Why the distension of the cervix is required? For childbirth, for parturition. Now the cervix has very few smooth muscle fibers, okay, and approximately 85% it is made up of dense connective tissue. And during menstrual cycle, okay, it doesn't undergo remarkable changes. I mean, that means some changes are taking place, not like the changes which are taking place in the endometrium. Next, during the pregnancy, the cervical mucus gland will proliferate and secretes more viscous, abundant mucus during the time of pregnancy. Okay. Next, the lumen of the cervix is normally very narrow, but it is having tremendous ability to dilate tremendously. Okay, which is important so that the head of the fetus can pass through it. That's why the elastic component is present in the cervix. Okay. Okay, so I have mentioned that the mucosa which is there, it is lying on the fibroelastic tissue, where smooth muscle fibers are also there. Along with that, elastic component also there. That means elastic fibers are also there, and that allows the cervix to dilate. Okay, so that the head of the fetus can come out through the cervical canal. And along with that, dense connective tissue are also present. Okay. Next, the glands which are present in the cervix, that is also important. Why? Because during the time of pregnancy, as you can see, during the time of pregnancy, the mucus gland will proliferate and will secrete more viscous and abundant mucus. And in general, the mucus which is secreted by the cervical gland, that keeps the vaginal mucosa moist. So these are some important functions of the mucus glands which are present in the cervix. Next, another part of the cervix is that is called Ectocervix. Okay, this is the transformation zone where simple columnar epithelium of the cervical canal changes to stratified squamous non-keratinized epithelium, which continues with the vaginal epithelium. Okay, so we have seen three parts in the microscopic structure of the cervix. You can see three parts are there. First of all, the mucous membrane or the mucosal lining is called as endocervix. Okay, in the endocervix you can see the mucosal folds are there, and see these are the mucosal folds. These are also called as palmate folds. Okay, along with that you can see branch cervical glands are also there. See, cervical glands are also present. Then this entire part is the stroma. Okay, that fibroelastic stroma, where fibers, smooth muscles are there, and elastic fibers are also there. Along with that, dense connective tissue is present. Okay. And next part, this is the ectocervix. Now, what is this ectocervix? You have studied that cervix is extending into the wall of the vagina. Okay, so the part of the cervix which is extending into the wall of the vagina, that part is called as ectocervix. Now, what is present in the ectocervix? As you can see, the lining epithelium changes. Okay, that will be stratified squamous non-keratinized epithelium. Okay, so here you can see all the layers of the cervix. Okay, next is the vagina. So below the cervix, vagina is present. So what is there in the vagina? Three layers are there: mucosa, muscle coat, and adventitium. Okay, mucosa, muscle coat, and adventitium. Now in mucosa, as I said, it will be same like the lining epithelium of the lower part of the cervix near the external os, that is stratified squamous non-keratinized epithelium. Next to that, lamina propria is present, which is very thick in case of vagina. Okay, where blood vessels, lymphatics, nerves are present, but no glands. Glands are absent in this particular case. Okay. Next, we are getting the muscle coat. Okay, so smooth muscle fibers are also there, and along with that, striated muscle fibers or skeletal muscle fibers are also there. Okay. Now, if you see the smooth muscle fibers, how they are arranged, so inner circular and outer longitudinal fibers, and in between this, the elastic fibers are also present. Okay. Next, the adventitia, mainly made up of connective tissue, where again we are getting the elastic fibers. Okay. So, in case of the mucosa of the vagina, the mucous membrane shows numerous longitudinal folds. Here also longitudinal folds are present. Okay. Now, it also contains the lamina propria. Now, the lamina propria, as I said, it is very thick, vascular. Lining epithelium is stratified squamous non-keratinized epithelium, and it is devoid of mucous glands. That means no mucous glands are present over there. Okay, but how it is kept moist? As you can see, the vaginal surface is being kept moist by the secretion of the glands of the cervix. Okay. Next, the vaginal fluid which is present, that is derivative of the transudate present in the lamina propria and the secretion from the cervix. Okay. Now, the epithelial cells, these are rich in glycogen, and there are some naturally occurring bacterial flora present in the vagina. So, what they will do, as you can see, naturally occurring vaginal bacteria, they will metabolize the glycogen to form the lactic acid. That's why the medium of the vagina is acidic. Now, this is also important. Why it is important? Because it will protect the vagina from invasion of pathogenic bacteria. Okay, so this is a normal defense mechanism of our body to protect the invasion of different germs into the vagina. Okay. Next, the bacterial infection of the vagina is common during childhood and after menopause, as the acidity becomes less. Next, the lamina propria, which is present, as I said, below the lining epithelium, lamina propria is there, where loose connective tissue, blood vessels, lymphatics, nerves are there, and here also we are getting the elastic fibers. Okay. Next, muscle coat is there. Now, here a speciality is there in the muscle coat. What is this speciality? First of all, it is made up of outer longitudinal and much thinner inner circular layer of smooth muscle. This is the arrangement of the muscle fibers which are present in the vagina. Okay. Next, in between the muscle fibers, as I said, many elastic fibers are present among the muscle fibers. Next, if you see the lower part of the vagina, that is surrounded by a striated muscle. Okay, so the upper part, middle part, smooth muscle fibers are there. But in the lower part of the vagina, okay, it is surrounded by striated muscle. And which is that striated muscle? That is the bulbospongious muscle. Okay, bulbospongious muscle. So that is the difference in case of vagina, where we are getting smooth muscles also and we are getting the striated muscles also. And lastly, the adventitia. Okay, so it is mainly made up of fibrous tissue containing elastic fibers, which is derived from peritoneum and covers the posterior fornix of the vagina. Now here you can see the layers of the vagina. Okay. Now here you can see this is the lining epithelium. Okay. So what is the lining epithelium in case of vagina? Stratified squamous non-keratinized. Okay, stratified squamous non-keratinized epithelium. Okay, so as you can see, this is the stratified squamous non-keratinized epithelium. Now below that, you can see this particular part is made up of lamina propria. So in case of vagina, the lamina propria which is present, it is very thick. Okay, lamina propria is very thick, where lymphatics, blood vessels, nerves, all those things are present, but glands are absent. Okay, that's why you can't see any glands present over here. Only you can see the blood vessels. After that, the muscle coat is there. Muscle coat, outer longitudinal, okay, and inner circular layer. So this is the inner circular layer, this is the outer longitudinal layer. So this is the muscle coat which you can see in case of vagina. Now in the muscle coat, in between the muscle fibers, what is present? Elastic fibers are present. Okay? And lastly, here adventitia is not shown, which is made up of fibrous tissue, mainly having elastic fibers, which is derived from peritoneum and covers the posterior fornix of the vagina. Okay, so that is all about the layers of the vagina. Okay. Okay. Now last part which is left, that is the fallopian tube. Okay, we can't forget the fallopian tube, right? Now in fallopian tube also 3 layers are there, as you can see: mucosa, muscle coat, serosa. Okay. Now in case of mucosa, it is ciliated simple columnar epithelium. Okay. Along with that, non-ciliated secretory cells are also present. These are called as PEG cells. So 2 types of cells are present in the mucosa. What are they? Along with that, lamina propria is also present. So what are the cells present? Lining epithelium, that is simple columnar epithelium, that also ciliated. Along with that, non-ciliated cells are there, which is secretory in nature. These are called as PEG cells. Okay, so PEG cells का function क्या है? The secretions which are taking place from the PEG cell, they provide nutrition, okay, to the spermatozoa which is traveling through it, okay, to the ovum which is passing through it, okay, it is providing nutrition. For that, the secretory columnar simple PEG cells are present. Okay, next muscle coat. Okay, muscle coat is very important. Inner circular, outer longitudinal muscle coat is present. Okay, that is the arrangement of the muscle fiber in case of fallopian tube: inner circular and outer longitudinal. Next, if you see the mucous membrane, as I said, 2 different types of cells are there. Along with that, the mucosa shows numerous longitudinal folds. Okay, here also longitudinal folds are present in the mucous membrane, which will fill the lumen. So that means very small part of the lumen is empty. Mostly you can see it is filled by the mucosal folds. Okay, and lastly the serosa. Okay, because most of the, you can say, entire fallopian tube is covered by peritoneum. That's why peritoneal coat is there with mesothelium. And here you can see the diagram. Okay, in this diagram you can see. So can anyone tell me what is this? This is the lumen of the fallopian tube. Okay, actually fallopian tube, if you see the length, approximately it is 10 centimeter. Okay, the length of the fallopian tube, it is approximately 10 centimeter, and if you see the diameter, it is very less, approximately 3 millimeter. That also inside the lumen, if you see the lumen of the fallopian tube, this is almost occupied by the folds. So these are nothing but the mucosal folds, as you can see, mucosal folds. Okay, so on that you have to identify. So see, this is the lumen, and you can see the lumen is almost occupied by the mucosal folds. Okay, so on that you have to identify the lining epithelium. Okay, so these are the lining epithelium. This is the lining epithelium, this is the lining epithelium, and this is the lamina propria. Okay, so in lining epithelium, as I said, 2 types of cells are there. So in order to see this particular part clearly, one magnified version is shown over here. Okay, one magnified image where you can see 2 types of cells can be seen. So these are the ciliated columnar epithelium, as you can see, and some non-secretory cells are there, which are called as PEG cells. Non-ciliated cells are present, sorry, these are called as PEG cells, which are secretory in nature. Okay, that you can see over here. Next, this entire part is the lumen, where you can see folds are occupying the lumen. Okay, next, this is the muscular coat. Okay, a muscular coat, you can see inner circular and outer longitudinal layers can be seen distinctly. Now this particular layer is very important because the active contraction of this particular layer helps in conduction of the ovum, which is passing through the fallopian tube. Okay, and lastly you can see the serosa. So this is the serosa. Okay. So that is all about the fallopian tube. 3 layers are there in the fallopian tube. Okay. In the 3 layers, what are present? First of all, the lining epithelia, along with that secretory packed cells are present, which will be supported by the lamina propria. Mucosal folds are almost occupying the lumen. Next is the muscle coat. Okay, in a muscle coat we have seen 2 distinct layers are there, that is inner circular, outer longitudinal, and the outermost is the serosa, which is mainly derived from peritoneum. Okay, some other images are also there. As you can see, this is the original image of histological image of the fallopian tube under low magnification. Okay, so this is how it appears. So see, this is the lumen, almost entirely it is occupied by the folds. Okay, and here only you have to identify the lining epithelium. As you can see, lining epithelium, this is the lamina propria. Okay, now in order to identify the lining epithelium and secretory packed cell, high magnification is required. Without that, it cannot be identified. But the muscle layer can easily be identified. Okay, as you can see, these are the muscle layer, inner circular, outer longitudinal, it can be identified easily. Okay, followed by the serosa. Okay, so that is all about the fallopian tube. So today I have completed the female reproductive system. Okay. During histo demonstration class, I will show you the slides, whatever it is available over here. Okay. So what I have noticed is, in case of female reproductive system and in case of male reproductive system also, identification of the slides are very easy. Okay. Identification of the slides are easy. Once you see the slide diagram or the images clearly, okay, you can identify the slides. It's not that difficult. Okay. Okay, so that is all about the female reproductive system. In the next class, we'll discuss about the lymphatic system. Thank you.